This is a statue of the Buddha. This is from Southeast Asia. And if you look, you will notice he's wearing a beautiful cloak, a beautiful cape. Buddha was a great teacher, kind, wise, and always wanting to help the people. I'm going to be telling you the Vietnamese New Year story. Vietnamese call New Year Tet. And in our story, the Buddha is a very important character. In our story, we also have demons. Now, demons are selfish, greedy creatures, and they never like to share. You can take a moment to imagine your own demon. Picture what its fangs might look like, what its claws look like, what color is its skin and its hair. Before we start our story, we have to understand a few things about how food grows. This is a picture of rice growing, and all of the delicious food is up here in the tips, and down below, just scraggly green things and scruffy little roots, not much delicious or nourishing in that. And this is how potatoes grow. And potatoes grow with all the delicious food down here in the roots. But up above, in the tips, just scraggly little green stuff, not much delicious there. And finally, this is how corn grows. Up above, greens and silky tassels. Down below, the scraggly little roots. But in the middle, delicious, fat, sweet ears of corn. And the last thing you need to know before we start our story is how shadows work. So I'm going to ask you to pretend that this is a beautiful pole, a big bamboo pole, and on top is a piece of fabric. It might be like a piece of fabric like the Buddha is wearing on his cape. Now I'm going to walk over, we're going to pretend this is the sun, and I'm just going to show you how a shadow works. So if the cloak and the pole are far away from the sun, you can see that the shadow is very small. But if the pole grows and gets closer to the sun, the shadow made by the cloak gets really, really large. So look one more time. Far from the sun, the shadow is small, but with the pole growing, the closer it gets to the sun, the bigger the shadow grows. Long, long ago in Vietnam, the land was ruled by the demons, and the people had to work very hard for the demon king. The demon king noticed that the people were planting rice, and they were eating the delicious rice from the tips of the plants. And so one year, the demon king called the people to him, and he said, "People, this year you will plant, but we demons will eat the tips, and you humans, you'll get whatever's left." And so the humans planted their rice, and when it was time to harvest, they had to give the demons all the delicious rice at the tips, and all the humans had to eat were the scraggly roots. And that year the humans were so hungry. They were sick and they were weak. But the demons, they were fat and they were happy and they were laughing. So the demon king called the people again and said, "Next year, humans, it's the same plan. You plant. We demons will get the tips. You humans, you get whatever's left." Well, the humans gathered together. They were really sad. "We're so hungry. Some of us will surely get sick and die." And they didn't know what to do. And suddenly they saw a figure coming to them down the road. And it was the Buddha. He was wearing his cape, and he was walking with a tall bamboo pole, a bamboo walking stick, and he gathered the people around him, and he said, "People, don't worry. This year, plant potatoes." And the people planted potatoes. And of course, all those delicious, juicy, fat potatoes grow in the roots. So they did exactly what the Demon King had told them, and they ate the delicious potatoes from the roots, and all the demons had were the scraggly green plants that were growing in the tips. Well, the demons were furious. "You humans, you tricked us. This year you can plant, but we demons will eat the tips and the roots." Well, the humans were very sad. "What will we do now? The tips and the roots, surely we will starve and we will die." And then they saw a figure coming down the road towards them. And it was again the Buddha, with his beautiful cloak and his tall bamboo walking stick. He gathered the people and he said, "This year, humans, plant corn." And that's exactly what the humans did. They planted the corn, and they did just as they had been told by the Demon King. They left the roots. They left the silky tassels on the tips, and the humans took home all of the fat, juicy, delicious ears of corn, and the humans were laughing and satisfied and happy, and the demons, they were furious. The Demon King called the humans to him. "You have tricked us again. Now you will plant nothing, for we demons own all this land, and you have no land to plant." Well, the humans gathered together. They were so sad. They were crying. They didn't know what to do. And again, a figure walked up the road towards them. And it was again the Buddha, wearing his cape and walking with a tall bamboo walking stick. He gathered the humans to him, and he told them exactly what to do. He gave them his tall bamboo pole. He gave them the beautiful cloak from around his shoulders, and he told them to call the Demon King. When the Demon King arrived, the leader of the humans did exactly as the Buddha had told him. "O great Demon King, we humans will give you all of the money that we have if you will allow us to own only the small amount of land that is covered in shadow when we plant this bamboo pole in the ground and put this cloak above on top of it. And you demons can own all the rest, and you can have all of our money." The Demon King thought for a moment. "Set it up and let me see the shadow." So they set up the pole, and they put the cloak on top, and a warm, gentle breeze came from the same direction down the road where the Buddha had always come to them. And it lifted the fabric of the cloak just about as wide as my arms. And so the shadow on the ground below was only about as wide as my arms. And the Demon King looked at the shadow. "That's a pretty small shadow. Show me the money." Now, the humans didn't have a lot of money, but they took all the money they had from their pockets and they put it into a pile. And you know, with so many humans in the land, that pile was a pretty good size. And when the Demon King saw a shadow only as wide as my arms and a big pile of money, he threw back his head and he roared with laughter. "I'll do it." And so an agreement was written. The humans would own only the land inside the shadow. The Demon King would own the money and all the land outside of the shadow. And once the agreement was signed, the humans had to try to fit into a shadow only as wide as my arms, and the demons were standing outside shoving them into the shadow. And the humans, they were getting on top of each other's shoulders and carrying each other and squinching and squishing and trying to fit in there into that shadow. It was really tight, and the demons were howling from the outside, "Get in there, get off our land." Well, the Buddha, created magic. The Buddha made that bamboo walking stick of his grow, and it began to grow up towards the sun, and the higher that cloak and pole went towards the sun, well, the bigger the shadow grew. And it got so close to the sun that the shadow grew and grew and grew so big that the demons, they had to leap back to get out of the shadow. It wasn't their land. And they had to leap back again to get out of the shadow because it wasn't their land. And they had to keep leaping back and leaping back as the shadow grew to cover the entire land of Vietnam. And the demons were pushed, howling and screaming, into the sea. Well, after that, the humans could plant rice and potatoes and corn and eat the tips and the roots and everything in between. And they were fat and they were happy. And every year since, when they celebrate New Year's, which is called Tet, they take a big tall bamboo pole and plant it in the ground, and they put bits of fabric on the top of that pole, and they call it the Tet Pole. And they do this to remember a time when Buddha, the great, wise, kind teacher, saved them from the demons.